Hey everyone. I never thought I'd be the guy posting here, but I guess life has a way of flipping your world upside down when you least expect it. My name's Michael, and up until a year ago, I thought I had it all: a stable job, a loving wife, and two incredible kids. Jennifer and I had been married for 17 years. We met in college, and to me, it was love at first sight. She was everything I ever wanted in a partner: kind, funny, ambitious. I thought we were solid, unshakable. Looking back now, maybe I should have seen the cracks sooner. Jennifer started working late more often. It was subtle at first, just a few extra hours at the office, the occasional work trip. "I'm doing this for us," she'd say when I asked if everything was okay. She'd smile and pat my hand like I was being paranoid. I told myself I was overthinking it. She's always been driven, and I admired that about her. But then, the absences got longer, the phone calls more secretive. Our once easy conversations started feeling strained. The laughter we shared turned into cold, short exchanges. I was juggling a lot myself, trying to keep up with work while managing our finances, which were worse off than I'd realized. The bills were stacking up, and Jennifer seemed oblivious. I'd bring it up, and she'd wave me off saying, "You worry too much, Michael. Everything will work out." But it wasn't working out. I started cutting back on things for myself, thinking it was temporary, but I never saw her doing the same. That's when I began to feel like we were living two separate lives under the same roof. Then came the bombshell. One evening, as we sat in the living room, her scrolling through her phone, me flipping through a pile of overdue notices, Jennifer put her phone down and said, "I want a divorce." Just like that. No warning, no build-up. I didn't even process the words at first. I stared at her, waiting for her to laugh, to tell me it was a joke, but her face stayed cold, emotionless. "Why?" I finally managed to ask. Her answer? "I just don't feel the same way about us anymore." The way she said it, like she was talking about a worn-out pair of shoes she wanted to replace, sent a chill through me. I asked her if there was someone else, but she denied it, called me paranoid. Still, something didn't sit right. I didn't know how to tell the kids. Our son Ryan is 14, and our daughter Emily is 11. They deserve to grow up in a loving home, not torn apart by lies and betrayal. That night, I sat in my car, staring out at the empty street, trying to figure out where things went so wrong. If you've made it this far, thanks for reading. I'll share more soon. I need to get this all out before it eats me alive. After Jennifer dropped the divorce bombshell, I was stuck in a daze for days. I'd look at her and wonder how she could act so normal, going about her routine like she didn't just shatter our lives. I tried to talk to her again, to figure out what had gone so wrong, but she kept shutting me down. "I've made up my mind, Michael," she'd say, like I didn't even have a say in the matter. The worst part was how it all seemed so calculated. She had already spoken to a lawyer, already had a plan for how we divide everything up. It wasn't just an emotional outburst. She had been planning this behind my back for who knows how long. It felt like a betrayal, not just of me but of everything we'd built together. Ryan and Emily could sense something was wrong. They weren't stupid. Jennifer might have been able to carry on like everything was fine, but I couldn't. Ryan asked me one night, "Dad, are you and Mom okay?" The look in his eyes broke me. I told him, "We're figuring some things out, buddy, but we'll always love you and Emily. That'll never change." He nodded, but I could tell he didn't believe me. Things only got worse from there. I started noticing things that didn't add up, little clues that kept piling up. There were the late-night texts she'd suddenly put her phone face down to hide. The work trips that conveniently fell on weekends. The expensive clothing purchases I didn't remember seeing in her closet. I decided to do something I never thought I'd do. I snooped. I hated myself for it, but I had to know. Her laptop was open one evening while she was in the shower, and curiosity got the better of me. My hands were shaking as I clicked through her emails. That's when I found it. A confirmation for a weekend getaway at a luxury resort. The reservation was for two. The dates matched one of her so-called business trips. My stomach dropped. It wasn't just the betrayal that hurt, it was how easily she lied to me, to our kids. When she came downstairs later that night, I confronted her. "Who's he?" I asked, holding up my phone with a picture of the reservation on the screen. Her face turned pale, but then she recovered, putting on that cold, dismissive mask she'd been wearing for months. "That's none of your business," she said flatly. "None of my business." Those 4 words hit me like a freight train. I couldn't believe she was actually trying to justify this. None of my business. You're my wife, Jennifer. This is my life too. She didn't deny it. She just crossed her arms and said, I deserve to be happy, Michael. You should understand that by now. That's when I realized she wasn't the woman I fell in love with. The Jennifer I knew would have fought for our family, for our marriage. This version of her, the one standing in front of me, talking about deserving happiness while tearing our lives apart, was a stranger. I didn't yell. I didn't throw things. I just walked out the door and drove. I didn't even know where I was going. I just needed to get away. It wasn't until I pulled into an empty parking lot at midnight that the weight of it all hit me. I sat there, gripping the steering wheel, trying to hold back tears. The life I thought I had was gone, and I didn't even know who I was anymore. That night, I made a decision. If Jennifer was going to lie and cheat and destroy everything we built, then I was going to fight for the truth, for myself and for my kids. They deserved better than this mess. So did I. The days after that confrontation were some of the hardest of my life. Jennifer had officially stopped pretending. She started staying out even later, coming home well past midnight without offering excuses. I didn't ask anymore. I already knew the answer. But it was the kids who kept me anchored. They didn't understand what was happening, not fully, but they could feel the shift. Emily started crawling into bed with me at night, something she hadn't done in years. Ryan stopped eating dinner at the table, always claiming he wasn't hungry, then sneaking snacks later. The cracks were showing everywhere. I knew I needed proof. Not for revenge, not even really for myself, but for the divorce that was looming over us. I wanted to make sure the kids didn't get dragged into her chaos, and if this guy she was seeing turned into something serious, I needed to know who he was. So I did something else I never thought I'd do. I hired a private investigator. His name was Sam, and he was about as no-nonsense as they come. He didn't offer me false hope or sugarcoat anything. You want answers? I'll get them for you. But you might not like what you find. 2 weeks later, Sam called me to meet him at a diner. He slid a manila envelope across the table. Inside were photos, grainy, but clear enough to tell the story. Jennifer wasn't just seeing someone, she was seeing her boss. They were holding hands at a restaurant, kissing in the parking lot, and worst of all, leaving a hotel together. My stomach churned as I flipped through the pictures, each one a knife to the chest. I'm sorry, man, Sam said, his voice low. I nodded, unable to find the words. What hit me the hardest wasn't the affair itself. I had already suspected that. It was the fact that she brought this guy into the kids' lives. There were pictures of her with him at a park, Ryan and Emily in the background. She had lied to them too, parading this man around like he was some family friend while I was sitting at home trying to hold everything together. When I got home, I confronted her again. This time, I was armed with the photos. I laid them out on the kitchen table and waited for her to come in. She froze when she saw them, her face a mixture of shock and annoyance, like I'd inconvenienced her. What is this, Michael? She said, her voice icy. This is the truth, I replied. The truth you've been hiding from me and from our kids. She didn't even try to deny it. So what? You're spying on me now. I slammed my hand on the table, harder than I intended. Don't you dare make this about me, Jennifer. You lied to me, to Ryan, to Emily. You brought this man around our kids and thought I wouldn't find out. Her cold facade cracked, and for the first time in weeks, I saw a flash of guilt in her eyes. I didn't mean for it to happen like this, she said softly. But it did happen, Jennifer, I shot back. You made it happen. And now you're going to have to live with the consequences. She didn't say anything after that, just walked out of the room. I stayed in the kitchen, staring at those pictures, wondering how we had gotten to this point. I wanted to hate her, but more than anything, I just felt empty. That night, I sat Ryan and Emily down to talk. I didn't tell them everything. I didn't want to drag them into the mess, but I explained as gently as I could that their mom and I were going through something serious and that things were going to change. Ryan looked at me with those big questioning eyes of his and asked, "Is it our fault?" My heart broke into 1,000 pieces. "Nobody," I said, pulling him into a hug. "It's not your fault. It's not Emily's fault either. Sometimes grown-ups make mistakes, and it's hard to fix them. But I promise you, no matter what happens, your mom and I both love you so much." Emily clung to me that night, and I stayed up watching them sleep, wondering how I was going to protect them from all of this. I didn't have all the answers yet, but I knew one thing for sure, I wasn't going to let Jennifer's choices destroy their sense of security. They deserved better than this, and I was going to do everything in my power to give it to them. The fight was just beginning. The morning after I sat Ryan and Emily down, the house was eerily quiet. Jennifer had stayed out late again, but I didn't care where she was anymore. I made breakfast for the kids, trying to keep things as normal as possible. Emily smiled weakly at me as she picked at her pancakes, but Ryan barely looked up from his cereal. It was clear that they felt the tension, even if they didn't fully understand it. Later that day, Jennifer finally came home. She walked in like nothing was wrong, but the kids ran upstairs the moment they heard the door close. I couldn't blame them. Her presence felt like a storm cloud hanging over the house. "We need to talk," I said, blocking her path as she tried to head for the stairs. "Not now, Michael," she said, brushing past me. "No," I said firmly, grabbing her arm. "Now. We're not going to keep pretending everything's fine." She sighed dramatically, like I was some overbearing boss assigning her overtime. "Fine. What do you want to say?" "What I want," I started, my voice trembling with frustration, "is for you to explain how you could lie to me, to the kids, and to yourself for so long. How could you bring him around our children? Did you even think about what this would do to them?" Jennifer crossed her arms and stared at me like I was being unreasonable. "The kids love him," she said, her tone defensive. "And he's good to them. You should be happy someone else cares about them too." I couldn't believe what I was hearing. "They don't love him, Jennifer. They don't even know who he really is. You've been parading him around behind my back like he's some harmless friend. That's not love, that's manipulation." Her eyes flashed with anger. "You're just jealous, Michael. That's what this is really about, isn't it?" I took a deep breath, trying to stay calm. "This isn't about jealousy. It's about respect, for me, for our kids, and for the life we built together. You threw it all away for, what? Some fling with your boss." Her expression hardened, and for a moment, I thought she might actually apologize, but instead she said, "You don't understand. He listens to me, Michael. He makes me feel appreciated, like I matter. You haven't done that in years." That hit me like a punch to the gut. Maybe I hadn't been perfect. I'd spent so much time focused on work, trying to make ends meet, that I probably did take her for granted in some ways. But wasn't that what marriage was supposed to be about? Sticking together through the rough patches, not running off to the first person who made you feel special? "I didn't know you felt that way," I said quietly. "But instead of telling me, instead of trying to fix things, you decided to betray me and our family. Do you even realize what you've done?" Jennifer looked away, her lips pressed into a thin line. She didn't answer, and that silence told me everything I needed to know. She didn't regret her actions, she just regretted getting caught. By the end of that conversation, it was clear that we were done. There was no salvaging our marriage, not when she couldn't even admit she'd done anything wrong. I told her I wanted a separation, and for the first time, she looked genuinely shocked. "You're really going to do this?" she asked, her voice wavering slightly. "You already did it," I replied, turning to leave the room. Over the next few weeks, things got messy. Jennifer moved into the guest room, and we started splitting up responsibilities with the kids. I did my best to shield them from the worst of it, but it wasn't easy. Ryan started acting out at school, getting into fights and refusing to do his homework. Emily, on the other hand, became quieter than ever, retreating into herself in a way that broke my heart. I knew I had to be strong for them, but every time I saw Jennifer, every time I heard her laughing on the phone or saw her packing an overnight bag, it took everything in me not to explode. How could she be so carefree when our family was falling apart? The tipping point came one evening when Jennifer came home late, again. She was clearly drunk, her makeup smudged and her hair a mess. Ryan was waiting for her, sitting on the couch with his arms crossed. "Where were you?" he demanded, his voice shaking with anger. "Out with friends," Jennifer said, waving him off like it was no big deal. "You're lying," Ryan shouted, tears streaming down his face. "Why are you always lying?" Jennifer froze, clearly caught off guard. I stepped in, pulling Ryan into a hug as he sobbed against my chest. "It's okay, buddy," I whispered. "I've got you." Jennifer tried to say something, but I held up my hand to stop her. "You've done enough damage for one night," I said coldly. "Go to bed, Jennifer." She looked at me for a long moment before turning and heading upstairs. Ryan cried himself to sleep that night, and I stayed by his side, my heart breaking for him and Emily. This wasn't the life I wanted for them, but it was the one we were stuck with, for now. I knew it was time to start taking real steps toward protecting my kids and myself. Jennifer could do whatever she wanted, but I wasn't going to let her destroy what was left of our family. It was time to fight back. After that night with Ryan, everything changed. Whatever hope I'd held onto that Jennifer and I could at least co-parent amicably was gone. Her selfishness wasn't just affecting me anymore, it was tearing our kids apart. I decided I couldn't wait any longer to take action. The first thing I did was meet with a lawyer. Sitting in that sterile office, listening to her explain custody arrangements, financial disclosures, and dividing assets, made everything feel painfully real. The lawyer, a sharp woman named Angela, didn't sugarcoat anything. "Michael, if you want primary custody of your kids, you'll need to prove that their mother's behavior is detrimental to their well-being," she said, flipping through the notes I'd given her. "The photos of her with her boss? They'll help. But you'll need more. Testimonies, timelines, evidence of neglect, it all matters." Hearing it laid out like that was overwhelming, but Angela's confidence gave me a sense of direction. She recommended I start documenting everything, every late night, every broken promise, every instance where Jennifer prioritized her new life over our kids. It felt cold and calculating, but I knew it was necessary. At home, things continued to deteriorate. Jennifer and I barely spoke except to exchange details about the kids' schedules. She was out more often than not, leaving me to handle dinner, homework, and bedtime routines. I didn't mind. It was actually a relief to focus on Ryan and Emily, to give them some sense of stability. One evening, while Jennifer was out again, Emily wandered into my home office clutching her favorite stuffed bear. "Daddy, why doesn't Mommy love us anymore?" she asked, her voice small and fragile. The question hit me like a ton of bricks. I pulled her onto my lap and hugged her tightly. "Mommy loves you, sweetheart," I said, my throat tightening. "She's just going through a hard time right now. But that doesn't mean she doesn't care about you. Then why isn't she here?" Emily whispered, tears spilling down her cheeks. I didn't have an answer for that. Instead, I just held her, silently cursing Jennifer for putting us in this position. After a while, Emily fell asleep in my arms, and I carried her to bed, tucking her in and kissing her forehead. The next day, I called Angela and told her I was ready to move forward with filing for divorce and seeking primary custody. "Good," she said. "We'll need to act quickly. I'll get started on the paperwork." When Jennifer came home that night, I was waiting for her in the living room. She looked surprised to see me up so late. "We need to talk," I said, motioning for her to sit down. "What now, Michael?" she sighed, clearly annoyed. "I've filed for divorce," I said bluntly. "And I'm seeking primary custody of the kids." Her eyes widened, and for the first time in months, I saw genuine fear on her face. "You can't do that," she said, her voice trembling. "You can't take my kids away from me." "They're our kids, Jennifer," I shot back. "And they deserve a parent who puts them first. You've been too busy chasing whatever it is you're looking for to even notice how much this is hurting them." Jennifer tried to argue, claiming I was overreacting, that she'd been working through some things and would do better. But I didn't buy it. "This isn't about me being angry or petty," I said. "This is about what's best for Ryan and Emily. And right now that's not you." The conversation ended with her storming upstairs, slamming the door to the guest room. I sat there for a long time, staring at the family photos on the mantel, wondering how we'd ended up here. The next few weeks were a blur of meetings with lawyers, gathering evidence, and trying to keep things as normal as possible for the kids. Jennifer became more combative, accusing me of trying to ruin her life. But the truth was, she had already ruined ours. I was just trying to pick up the pieces. One evening, as I was helping Ryan with his math homework, he looked up at me and said, "Dad, are we going to be okay?" His question broke my heart, but I smiled and said, "Yeah, buddy. We're going to be okay. It might take some time, but I promise we'll figure this out." And in that moment, I knew I wasn't just fighting for custody or closure, I was fighting for my kids' future, for their chance to feel safe and loved in a world that had been turned upside down. That was all the motivation I needed to keep going. Jennifer's reaction to the divorce papers was explosive. She accused me of trying to destroy her life, but I stayed calm. "This isn't about you, Jennifer. It's about what's best for the kids." I could see the fear in her eyes. She tried to make promises, she'd spend more time at home, she'd change, but it all felt hollow. I'd given her too many chances already, and the damage was done. In the meantime, I focused on Ryan and Emily. I kept their routines as steady as possible: homework, family dinners, and bedtime stories. Emily started drawing pictures for me, each one labeled me and Daddy. Ryan, who had been distant, finally started opening up after I took him to a baseball game. Slowly, they were beginning to feel safe again. Jennifer, however, was unraveling. She started coming home drunk, her excuses getting weaker. One night, she stumbled in, and Ryan saw her. "Go to bed, Mom," he said coldly, walking away without another word. The look on her face was one of pure defeat. That was the moment I knew I had the upper hand. Jennifer's choices were speaking louder than any argument I could make in court. Now, it was just a matter of seeing it through. Jennifer's reaction to the divorce papers was explosive. She accused me of trying to destroy her life, but I stayed calm. "This isn't about you, Jennifer. It's about what's best for the kids." I could see the fear in her eyes. She tried to make promises. She'd spend more time at home, she'd change, but it all felt hollow. I'd given her too many chances already, and the damage was done. In the meantime, I focused on Ryan and Emily. I kept their routines as steady as possible: homework, family dinners, and bedtime stories. Emily started drawing pictures for me, each one labeled me and Daddy. Ryan, who had been distant, finally started opening up after I took him to a baseball game. Slowly, they were beginning to feel safe again. Jennifer, however, was unraveling. She started coming home drunk, her excuses getting weaker. One night, she stumbled in, and Ryan saw her. "Go to bed, Mom," he said coldly, walking away without another word. The look on her face was one of pure defeat. That was the moment I knew I had the upper hand. Jennifer's choices were speaking louder than any argument I could make in court. Now, it was just a matter of seeing it through. The court process began, and it wasn't long before Jennifer started playing the victim. She claimed I was controlling and trying to alienate the kids from her. It stung, hearing her twist the truth, but I kept my focus on what mattered: Ryan and Emily. The evidence Angela and I collected painted a clear picture: Jennifer's absences, her reckless behavior, and even her neglectful moments with the kids. The private investigator's photos, coupled with testimonies from teachers who noticed Ryan's recent struggles, worked in my favor. Jennifer's lawyer tried to spin it, saying she was finding herself and that her mistakes didn't define her as a mother. But when the judge asked her why she had brought a man into the kids' lives without telling me, her weak answers fell flat. Outside the courtroom, Jennifer confronted me. "Are you happy now, Michael?" Turning everyone against me. I looked her in the eye and said, "This isn't about winning, Jennifer. It's about protecting our kids. If you can't see that, then maybe this is exactly why I'm doing this." As I walked away, I felt a weight lift off my shoulders. For the first time in months, I felt like I was taking control of my life again. After that courtroom confrontation, Jennifer's behavior became even more erratic. She started making desperate attempts to win back the kids, showing up unexpectedly at Ryan's baseball games, promising Emily extravagant gifts. At first, I was worried it might work, but the kids saw through it. They wanted consistency, not empty promises. One evening, while tucking Emily into bed, she whispered, "Daddy, I don't like it when Mommy says bad things about you." I froze, anger bubbling beneath the surface. "What did she say, sweetheart?" I asked gently. Emily hesitated, then said, "She told me you don't want us to love her." I hugged her tightly, my heart breaking all over again. "That's not true, Emily," I said. "No matter what happens, I just want you and Ryan to feel loved, by both of us." Ryan overheard and chimed in. "Dad, we know. We see what's going on." It was bittersweet hearing that. My kids were strong, but they shouldn't have to be. That night, I resolved to press harder for full custody. Jennifer's manipulative tactics weren't just hurting me, they were hurting them. I wasn't going to let her keep pulling them into her chaos. The final custody hearing was fast approaching, and the tension in the house was palpable. Jennifer had started acting like the perfect mom whenever she was around, cooking dinner, helping with homework, and posting pictures on social media with captions like, "Family first." It felt staged, but I knew it was all part of her attempt to sway the court. The kids, however, weren't buying it. One night, Ryan pulled me aside. "Dad, why is Mom trying so hard now?" he asked. "She never cared about my games before." I hesitated, choosing my words carefully. "Sometimes people only realize what's important when they feel like they might lose it," I said. He nodded, but I could tell he wasn't convinced. Well, she can't just fake it and expect us to forget everything, he muttered before heading upstairs. His maturity amazed me, but it also hurt to see him so jaded at such a young age. As the court date neared, Angela helped me finalize my case. We had documented Jennifer's absences, her drinking, and her emotional instability. But the most powerful evidence came from the kids themselves. Ryan told his teacher he felt safer with me, and the teacher submitted a letter to the court. Emily's drawings, always showing her with me, spoke volumes, even if unintentionally. I hated that it had come to this, but I knew I was doing the right thing. For the first time in months, I felt like there was a light at the end of the tunnel. The day of the final custody hearing arrived, and I was a bundle of nerves. Angela reassured me as we walked into the courtroom, but my heart pounded as I sat down and saw Jennifer across the room. She looked composed, but her eyes avoided mine. The hearing started, and both sides presented their cases. Angela was methodical, laying out all the evidence: the nights Jennifer was absent, her erratic behavior, and the private investigator's photos. Jennifer's lawyer tried to counter, portraying her as a misunderstood mother who had made mistakes but was trying to improve. Then, the judge asked if Ryan and Emily wanted to speak. My stomach churned as Ryan walked in, standing tall for a 14-year-old. He was calm but firm as he told the judge, "I love my mom, but I feel safer with my dad. He's always there for us." Emily didn't have to testify directly, but her teacher's letter was read aloud. It described Emily's quiet withdrawal whenever Jennifer missed school events or made promises she didn't keep. Jennifer started to cry as the evidence mounted. I felt a pang of guilt, but I reminded myself that this was about the kids, not her feelings. When the judge finally announced the decision, my breath caught. I was granted primary custody, with Jennifer allowed supervised visitation. Relief washed over me, but it was bittersweet. The woman I once loved was now just a shadow of the person I thought I knew. As I hugged Ryan and Emily outside the courthouse, I promised them, "This is a new beginning for us. Things will get better, I'll make sure of it." For the first time in a long while, I felt hopeful. Winning custody was a victory, but it didn't feel like a celebration. The kids were relieved, but there was an undeniable sadness hanging over us. Ryan, always mature for his age, asked me, "Do we still have to see Mom?" "Yes, buddy," I said. "She's still your mom, and she loves you. Even if things are messy right now, I want you to have a relationship with her." He nodded but didn't say much. Emily, on the other hand, clung to me more than ever. I could tell she was scared of what the future would look like, and I didn't blame her. Jennifer's supervised visitation started the following weekend. It was awkward, to say the least. A court-appointed supervisor sat in the room while Jennifer tried to engage with the kids. She brought them gifts, expensive ones, but Ryan barely glanced at them, and Emily stayed close to my side. When the visit ended, Jennifer pulled me aside. "Are you happy now, Michael?" she hissed. "You've turned them against me." I kept my voice calm. "They aren't against you, Jennifer. They're hurt. They need time." She scoffed, brushing past me to leave. Watching her walk away, I felt no satisfaction, just the weight of knowing this was our new reality. At home, Ryan helped Emily unpack the toys Jennifer had given her. "You don't have to keep them if you don't want to," he said, his voice soft. Emily looked at me. "Do I have to, Daddy?" "No, sweetheart," I said, kneeling down. "You don't have to do anything you're not comfortable with." She nodded and pushed the toys aside. It was a small moment, but it reminded me that rebuilding their trust would take time. I was ready to be patient, for them, and for myself. Over time, the visits with Jennifer became less tense but still strained. She'd try hard to win the kids over with gifts and apologies, but they weren't easily swayed. Ryan, especially, kept his distance. "She's just pretending, Dad," he told me after one visit. "It doesn't feel real." I didn't push him. Instead, I focused on creating a stable home for them. We started new traditions: Friday game nights, Sunday pancake breakfasts. Slowly, laughter returned to the house. Emily began drawing happier pictures, while Ryan opened up about school and his friends again. Jennifer texted often, asking for updates or more time with the kids, but I kept boundaries firm. "They need consistency right now," I told her. She didn't argue, but the bitterness in her voice was hard to miss. Every day felt like progress, small but meaningful. The kids were healing, and so was I. We weren't fully there yet, but for the first time in a long while, our lives felt like they were moving forward. Months passed, and the new routine began to feel normal. The kids adjusted well, but Jennifer struggled. She missed a few visits, offering weak excuses, and the kids barely seemed to notice. Ryan told me, "It's easier when she's not around." One afternoon, Jennifer showed up unannounced, hoping to see the kids. I stepped outside to talk. "You can't just show up, Jennifer. They need stability, not surprises." She sighed, looking defeated. "I'm trying, Michael. I don't know how to fix this." I softened but stayed firm. "It starts with showing up when you're supposed to. They'll notice effort, not grand gestures." She nodded but left without asking to come inside. When I told the kids she'd been there, Ryan just shrugged, and Emily quietly asked, "Why doesn't she try harder?" Their words stayed with me. As much as I wanted to shield them, some wounds were beyond my control to heal. All I could do was be there for them. Every single day, Jennifer's unannounced visit left me uneasy. It wasn't the first time she'd shown up unprepared or emotionally frazzled, but it felt different this time, like she was finally starting to grasp the consequences of her actions. Still, I couldn't let her inconsistency disrupt the kids' progress. Ryan and Emily were doing better, and I wasn't going to let anything derail that. After that day, Jennifer missed another scheduled visit. When the kids asked about it, I kept my answer simple: something must have come up. Ryan didn't even respond, just nodded and went back to his homework. Emily frowned. "She always has something else," she muttered, then ran upstairs before I could respond. That night, I found Emily sitting on her bed, clutching her stuffed bear. "Why doesn't Mommy want to see us anymore?" she asked, her voice barely above a whisper. I sat beside her, choosing my words carefully. "Sweetheart, I think Mommy is having a hard time right now. But her love for you hasn't changed. She's just figuring things out." Emily looked at me, her big eyes filled with doubt. "But you're always here," she said. "You don't need to figure things out." Her words hit me harder than she realized. "That's because you and Ryan are the most important part of my life," I told her, pulling her into a hug. "And I'll always be here for you, no matter what." As the weeks went by, Jennifer became less present in the kids' lives. Missed visits turned into sporadic texts, and when she did reach out, it felt forced, like she didn't know how to bridge the gap she'd created. Ryan noticed. "She doesn't even try anymore," he said one night after dinner. "Why should we care if she doesn't?" I didn't have an easy answer. "It's okay to feel hurt or angry," I told him. "But even if she's not doing a great job right now, she's still your mom. That doesn't mean you have to excuse her behavior, but it's okay to hope she'll get better." Ryan shrugged, clearly unconvinced. "I don't even care anymore," he muttered before walking off. But I could see the sadness in his eyes. He cared, even if he didn't want to admit it. Meanwhile, I doubled down on being present for the kids. Emily and I planted a small garden in the backyard, something she'd been asking to do for months. Ryan and I started a project together, building a model rocket. The little things helped them feel grounded, and for the first time in what felt like forever, our home was filled with laughter again. Then one evening, Jennifer called. I debated letting it go to voicemail, but I answered. "What's going on?" I asked, keeping my tone neutral. Her voice was shaky. "Michael, I know I've messed up. I know I've let the kids down. I don't know how to fix it." I sighed. "It's not about fixing it all at once, Jennifer. It's about showing up. Consistently. They don't need big apologies or gifts, they just need you to be there." She was silent for a long time. "Do you think they even want me in their lives anymore?" she finally asked. "They do," I said. "But it's going to take time to rebuild that trust. You have to earn it." Jennifer promised she'd try harder, but I'd heard that before. Still, I told her the truth. The door wasn't closed, but it was up to her to walk through it. When I told the kids about the call, Ryan rolled his eyes, but Emily's face lit up with cautious hope. "Does that mean she'll come to my recital next week?" she asked. "I hope so, sweetheart," I said, even though I wasn't sure. When the day of the recital came, Jennifer didn't show. Emily scanned the audience repeatedly, her smile faltering every time. Afterward, she clung to me, quietly asking if we could go home. Ryan, seeing how upset she was, took her hand and said, "Don't worry, Em. Dad and I are here. That's what matters." Hearing that broke my heart, but it also gave me a strange sense of pride. My kids were resilient. They were healing, even if Jennifer wasn't ready to be part of that journey yet. It wasn't the life I'd envisioned for them, but I knew we'd make it through, together. After Emily's recital and Jennifer's growing absence, I knew we were reaching a point of no return. She wasn't just fading from my life, she was fading from Ryan's and Emily's too. Her promises to try harder had become empty words, and every missed visit made it harder for the kids to hold on to the hope that she'd come back into their lives the way they needed. One Saturday, I decided to take the kids to a nearby park for some fresh air. It had been a tough week, and we all needed a break. Emily brought along her sketchbook, while Ryan brought a basketball. As we spread out the picnic blanket under a big oak tree, I noticed Emily wasn't her usual cheerful self. "Is everything okay, sweetheart?" I asked, sitting beside her as she doodled absent-mindedly. She hesitated, then looked up at me. "Do you think Mommy will ever come back? Like, really come back?" Before I could respond, Ryan, who was dribbling nearby, chimed in. "Why does it matter, Em? She doesn't care about us." "Ryan," I said gently, motioning for him to lower his voice. But Emily's eyes were already welling up with tears. "He's right," she said softly. "If she cared, she'd be here." I pulled her into a hug, feeling her small frame tremble against me. "It's not your fault, Emily. None of this is your fault. Sometimes people make bad decisions, even when they don't mean to hurt others. But that doesn't mean Mommy doesn't love you." She pulled back slightly and looked at me, her tears spilling over. "Then why doesn't she show it?" Her question gutted me. There wasn't a good answer, at least not one that would make sense to an 11-year-old. "I don't know, sweetheart," I admitted. "But what I do know is that you and Ryan are my everything. You're the most important part of my life, and I'll always be here for you. I promise." Ryan, who had been standing a few feet away, put down the basketball and walked over. "He's right, Em," he said, sitting beside her. "We don't need her. We've got each other." Hearing that broke my heart and warmed it all at once. Ryan had carried so much anger toward Jennifer, but now he seemed to be letting some of it go, not for her sake, but for his own. The three of us spent the rest of the afternoon playing games and laughing, and for the first time in a while, the weight of everything seemed lighter. But that night, after the kids were asleep, I found myself sitting alone in the living room, flipping through an old photo album. The pictures were from happier times, family vacations, birthday parties, quiet Sunday mornings. Jennifer's smile in those photos looked so genuine, so full of love. It was hard to reconcile that woman with the one she had become. I felt a deep sadness, not just for me, but for the family we used to be. But as I stared at the photos, I realized something. Those memories weren't lies. They were real, even if Jennifer's choices had shattered the foundation we'd built. Her betrayal didn't erase the good moments we shared or the love we once had. It had changed things, yes, but it didn't take away the years we spent building our family. That night, I made a decision. I couldn't keep dwelling on what we'd lost. I couldn't keep hoping Jennifer would suddenly become the mother Ryan and Emily needed her to be. Instead, I would focus on what I could control, the life I was building with my kids. The next day, we started making changes. We redecorated the house, giving Ryan and Emily the freedom to choose new colors for their rooms. Emily picked a bright yellow that reminded her of sunshine, while Ryan went for a deep navy blue. We started a family journal, where each of us wrote down something good that happened every day. It wasn't a magic solution, but it gave us something to look forward to and helped us focus on the positive. Jennifer's visits became less frequent until they stopped altogether. When I told the kids she wasn't coming that weekend, Ryan shrugged and said, "Figures." Emily looked sad but didn't cry this time. I think deep down, they had already accepted that she wasn't coming back, not in the way they needed her to. A few months later, Jennifer called me out of the blue. "Michael," she said hesitantly, "I'm moving out of state. I got a new job, and I think it's best if I take it." Her words didn't surprise me, but they still stung. "What about Ryan and Emily?" I asked. "Have you told them?" "I'll talk to them," she said quickly. "I'll call them tonight." She didn't. When I sat the kids down to explain, Ryan barely reacted. "Whatever," he said, staring at the floor. But Emily's face crumpled. "She's really leaving," she whispered. I hugged her tightly. "We're still here, sweetheart," I said. "And we're going to be okay." After Jennifer left, life settled into a new kind of normal. The kids thrived in ways I hadn't seen in years. Ryan joined the basketball team, and Emily started taking piano lessons. Our house was filled with laughter again, and for the first time, I felt like I was giving them the stability they deserved. One evening, as we sat around the dinner table, Emily looked up at me and said, "Daddy, I think we're happy now." Her words brought tears to my eyes. I reached across the table and squeezed her hand. "I think we are too, sweetheart." It wasn't the life I had envisioned for us, but it was ours. We had faced heartbreak, betrayal, and uncertainty, but we'd come out stronger on the other side. Jennifer's choices may have broken our family, but they didn't define us. We were building something better, day by day, moment by moment. And for the first time in a long while, I felt truly at peace.